cry, give up, throw away all your hard work. All right, video done.
No.
No, that's not what you do.
Every author eventually discovers that not everyone will like what they've written. And they will receive some criticism at some point in their journey.
It's rough, but you cannot please everyone. Whether it be a negative reader review or a professional's constructive feedback, it can be crushing to receive negative feedback.
Yeah, and I know what it's like. You've written this book, you've spent ages on it, you think you've got it together.
It's your baby.
Yeah, then you send it off to your beta readers or your editor, or even maybe you publish it. Before doing all that, bad idea. You do all of that, and then you get a laundry list of faults.
Oh no.
Yeah, it doesn't feel good.
Most writers assume that if they work hard enough, their book will be amazing and everyone will love it. But unfortunately, that's just not how it works.
And the interesting thing is that there is a process of predictable emotional response that everyone goes through when they get some sort of negative feedback, whether it's from a professional or from an ordinary reader review.
And if you know what that emotional process is, then you'll be able to handle it a lot better. So today we're going to talk about how to handle criticism without letting it ruin your confidence or stop you writing.
Hi, I'm Tahlia Newland, the managing editor at Alkira Publishing.
And I'm Rose Newland, the book designer at Alkira Publishing.
And at Alkira Publishing, we help authors to create quality books of which they can be proud. So why do you think criticism hits authors so hard?
I mean, writing is like any creative endeavor. It's a very personal thing. You spend months and months or years or decades even bringing this story out of you, putting it into the world, crafting it. It is literally a baby.
Yeah.
You know, and then you finally get it out into the world and you're proud. I mean, by the time you get it out in the world, you're done with it. And you're hopefully proud of it. And then, you know, this negative criticism comes back. It's really hard to not take that personally.
Yeah, so the first instinct is to take it personally, like you say. So that's the thing. You confuse your work with you.
Yeah, but your book is not you.
No, that's the first thing to remember. Your book is not you.
Yeah. Criticism is feedback. It's important to be able to try and separate yourself from your work. And, you know, sometimes feedback like that can help improve the work.
But before we can use criticism constructively, we usually go through these stages of emotional reaction, and it helps if we know what they are in advance.
So you've worked with countless authors as an editor. What are the common things that you see happening when an author receives critical feedback?
Yeah, well, I've worked on lots and lots of manuscripts, and they come to me in different stages, right? So sometimes people will send me their first draft, right? And I always say, don't send me first draft, send me second draft, right? Because you really need to have gone through it and done a bit of shaping yourself.
Self-editing
right?
first.
So if I do get a first draft, then there's invariably an awful lot of feedback that, you know, needs to be given. And I do try and give it as kindly as possible, but sometimes there just really is so much, and some authors, you know, I often give them instructions about how to handle it as well if it's really, you know, there's really a lot of work needs to be done. And some authors, they'll just come back to me and say, okay, that's fine, I'll get onto that, I'll do that, and I'll come back to you. Right? And those
Gold star.
Well, those are the authors who end up, like some of our authors, with lots and lots of books. They improve every time, so their books get better and better, and their editing costs go down and down and down because they're better writers. I have actually been abused by some people, but I know that's an emotional reaction. They've done that to protect themselves because they've taken the criticism personally. I have had a couple of people abandon their books, And I actually, in that instance, I did think it was the wisest thing. But they went on to write something better.
Right.
Because sometimes it's like you write something and it really is a learning book. And the traditional advice for people, if you wanted to be an author in the old system, was that you should write 3 practice novels before you even submit it to a publisher, right? So abandoning
the lumpy pancake theory. The first pancake's always lumpy and never great. You just make it, throw it away, move on to the next one.
Right.
So the second one's always better.
Yes. And that is hard, but sometimes it's the wisest thing. So it's disappointing, but feedback is just part of the creative process.
Yeah. And, you know, all artists experience this, no matter what form of creation you're involved in. But the professionals just simply learn to handle it better and to grow from it. But also to ignore the feedback which isn't relevant. Like, your perspective as a professional editor obviously has more weight to it than like some Joe Blow who just gave it 1 star on Amazon because they were like, oh, I don't like romance books. It's like, well, don't listen to Joe Blow, listen to the professional editor, you know?
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of that, but we'll get into that later.
And if Joe Blow doesn't like romance, why is he
Why did
reading
he
a
read the
romance book?
That's a pet peeve of ours. Anyway, moving on. And of course, as an author yourself, you've had this experience personally, haven't you? So what happened to you when you wrote this book and then did you send it to beta readers and then you got feedback and then what was the talk us through that process.
Okay. Yeah, I was actually really lucky because I had some very good beta readers. They were authors themselves that I knew and respected.
Very important.
And it was a book that was on a kind of cusp genre that I wasn't totally familiar with, and it was ambitious in what I was trying to do with it, and I knew it wasn't. So I really needed this feedback. So I got the feedback and I read it and go, oh my God, it's like, is that what they got from what I wrote? You know? It's like, seriously, how did I not see that?
Yeah.
Right? And
was it like the outside perspective showed up things that you hadn't realised? Or it's just like they hadn't gotten the point?
No. They
convey?
just showed up things that I hadn't seen.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, that lady seems really cold. You know, and that was totally not the character that I wanted, you know, and they just pointed out things that she'd done that, you know, seemed da-da-da. And then there were all these character relationships and there was a lot of dynamics and plot setup that was playing on some very tricky concepts in this particular book that we're talking about. And I could see that I wasn't handling them well. And I also could see that perhaps I'd bitten off a bit more than I could chew and that this was maybe
too ambitious basket.
Well, I just realised that to fix it up was going to take a huge amount of work, enormous amount of work, and then I was going to end up with a book that probably no one would understand. It wasn't
the curse of creativity.
It wasn't that my beta readers didn't understand it. I think they did kind of get what I was trying to do, but it was a topic that could easily be misunderstood, could easily by people be wrongly interpreted and get a backlash. And I went, this requires an enormous amount of skill.
Tricky.
And do I want to spend that amount of time working on this book that then I have to market, right? You know?
Okay, but how did that feedback make you feel?
Heavy.
Yeah.
I felt not crushed, right? But just like,
disappointed.
You know? Disappointed. Yeah, well, disappointed, but I think underneath I kind of knew that there were big problems with this story.
Yeah,
you
right.
know? And so I put it aside.
That's the reason that you eventually decided to put it.
I just abandoned it. Yeah, I just went, no, I'm not going to do this book.
Yeah.
And that wasn't an emotional reaction. That was a considered evaluation of the book, the amount of work done, and all of that.
And do you think in the end that process has improved your writing to go on for future books?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think perhaps the biggest thing I learned was a couple of things. One was make sure you're really, really clear about the intention of your book before you start, you know, so that, because this book had these fuzzy kind of like, are you saying this or are you saying that, you know, and you're trying to say both things at once, and is that something
it's
that
hard to do?
Very hard to do. And I think I just realised that sometimes it's just better to abandon a book and start fresh.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you should do.
Oh no.
This is just one specific reason where the feedback did actually make you realise that maybe it wasn't going to work for you. But there are other times, especially when you've worked with authors and, like you said, they've gone away and they've put all your feedback into use and the book comes back so much stronger because of it.
And I didn't stop writing. I went on to write other books and I learnt from the experience.
Yeah. So the criticism in the end did improve
absolutely
your writing process.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, I have learnt to handle criticism a lot in my life. Yes, these points we're going to give you are not just something I've picked up from somebody else.
No.
I have been there.
Personal.
Done that.
Yes.
I've seen bad reviews. I've felt the pain. Okay, so when authors receive feedback, they usually go through several emotional stages.
I reckon the first one's probably shock, horror. Oh, I thought my book was amazing.
Yep.
I mean, it's also that initial gut reaction of like, oh, this can't be true. Oh no, like I thought it was really good. I'm really happy with it. And like that first initial reaction is always going to be just like, damn.
Yeah. And then there's defensiveness.
Yeah.
Right? You get defensive, and the first thing is you try and minimize the knowledge of the person who has given the feedback.
Joe Blow doesn't know anything about books.
Yeah, and that may be the case, but if
maybe.
it's a professional editor that you're getting your feedback from, well...
Yeah. And, you know, an example of defensiveness, just to take a little sidestep from this list, is on the comments of some of our videos, we get, you know, a little bit of defensiveness from our viewers when they hear Tahlia talking about something that weakens writing, when we're talking about in our videos that are discussing writing techniques and how to strengthen your prose. We'll get comments that say maybe they recognize something that they do in their writing, and then they will, you know, try to minimize your experience, even though you've got 15 years experience as an editor. They'll say, oh, that's just a personal opinion, not a point of craft, when it really is something that all properly trained editors know and talk about. And then, you know, listing all of these popular books that have this fault, as if that makes it okay. And it's like, well, there's a difference between, you know, the classics that became famous hundreds of years ago and like what's popular now and what is considered good writing now.
Well, there's also a difference between a popular book and a well-written book.
Yes, very big difference between a popular book and a well-written book.
Popular books are not always well-written.
No.
Yeah, and well-written books are not always popular.
Exactly.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Some people say that paying attention to points of craft impedes your creativity. And they miss the fact that we are talking about the self-editing stage, not your first draft stage, right? So it's like they're applying something that is talking about what you do when you're self-editing to how they write in the beginning. I mean, when you write in the beginning, you just write. You don't care about anything, right? Nothing impedes your creativity. So when I talk about points of craft, I'm talking about self-editing and the editing process.
Intentionally making your writing stronger.
That's right. So
ways to do that.
Yeah. So when you go back and you look at it, and sometimes they will apply it to a different genre as well. Like if we're talking about fiction, for instance, and you apply it to non-fiction, it doesn't always work. But the point is that when we hear these things, I can see the defensiveness coming through in the author. They're finding all of these ways to discredit what you're saying to save their ego, really.
But all of the time with this stuff, it's guidelines, it's pointers, it's recommendations on how to make your writing stronger. The code is more what you call guidelines than actual rules.
Exactly that. And that's the thing that human brains do. They will see things in black and white, particularly if they feel threatened. Right? So their defensiveness is a reaction to feeling threatened. So you feel your writing's threatened, and if you think that your writing, then you feel threatened. And so you react, and one of the things is like, these are rules, I don't want to follow rules, you know, and they're not rules. as you say.
Yeah. So, defensiveness is a natural reaction, but it does block your learning. So if you already think you know everything about a thing, then you're not going to learn anything else about it.
Yes, and that makes me think of this wonderful Zen story of a person who comes to a master to learn things, and the master's pouring tea, and he says, "I'm not going to teach you." And the student says, "Well, why are you not going to teach me?" And he looks at the teacup, and he's pouring. The master's pouring, and the tea's just pouring out over the teacup. And he says, "Because if the cup is already full, I can't put anything more in it." So if you think you know better than everybody else, you're not going to learn anything.
Yeah.
You have to be open to learning. So, but you can recognise the defensiveness. It's like you go, "Oh, I'm being defensive," and when you recognise that, you go, "Oh, okay, well maybe I can step back from that a little bit and
disentangle the emotions."
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the stages. Stage 3 is likely depression. This is where you cry and want to give up.
And yeah.
You're crushed, you're questioning your own abilities.
Yeah.
You think, why do I even bother?
Yeah.
What a waste of my time. I should give up now.
Yeah.
I'm never going to make it.
Yeah. Yeah. And
many writers consider quitting.
Yeah. I remember my very first book, my very first draft of my first book, which I gave to my husband, who's not known for being particularly encouraging.
Very honest.
Very honest, though, which means his feedback's excellent. And he didn't say it. He didn't say anything. I'm going, why is he not saying?
No news is good news, right?
Why is he not saying anything? So I had to push and push and push to get, and then it was like, talk about depression. I was just so depressed because it was a mess. So it's natural to feel that way, right? But then after the depression comes letting go. Oh well, And sometimes you need to give up for a moment. It's like, I don't want to have anything to do with this book anymore. It's just
very good for one's mental health to be like, I'm not going to do it anymore.
That's right.
And take that pressure off. Take the mental pressure off.
Yeah. So the giving up doesn't need to be giving up forever. I'm a great believer in the occasional giving up.
Periodical, really.
Yeah. Like
I've given up on
day.
my film industry career so many times.
Yeah, every day. Just, all right, I'm giving up. And I'll go have a cup of tea or go for a walk, and then you just naturally come back to it. And, so if writing is for you, you will come back to it. So I don't think you need to fear the depression and then the feeling of just...
It's all part of the process, baby.
Part of the process. Yeah, and you have to let go of all of that before you can start learning, before you can go to the next step.
Yeah, it gives you a bit of perspective.
Yeah, you step back from it.
Yeah. And then once you step back, you get to stage 5, which is objective evaluation.
That's right, yeah.
You can come back, look at it and go, okay, what is this reviewer or editor who's given me this feedback actually saying? You've got that, you've gone through that emotional grieving stage, stepped back, and then you can look at it with a little bit more logic and less emotion and go, what are they actually saying? Is any of it valid? And then that's when you can evaluate what's the difference here between a person's random opinion and personal opinion versus professional feedback that is actually valid. And using your own sort of critical thinking once you've had that space to be able to then look at it and go, okay,
because it's hard.
I need to learn from this? Yeah,
and it's hard to have your critical thinking faculties fully functional if your emotions running the show. Yeah. So, like I often with editing clients that have got a lot to do, I will say, look, read it through and then just have a break for 3 days and don't look at it again.
Take a beat.
Yeah, and then, you allow all the stuff to kind of, and then you come back to it and you can see it clearly. So part of the objective evaluation is acceptance, right? Acceptance of what you've been given, but also acceptance of, and this is the next stage, of where you are in your writing journey and what you have to actually do with that book. So it's like, instead of, I don't want to do this, it's like, oh no, I can't, I've got to rewrite that whole section. No.
I've got to rewrite that whole section.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Acceptance. This is the work that I have to do.
Yeah. And, understanding that most books can be improved.
Yeah.
And, then you just get into moving forward, which is revising the book, rewriting that section, applying the lesson, either whether it's to this one or applying that to the next one. And hopefully that brings you some satisfaction and some growth as a writer.
Yeah.
So those are the overall stages, but I want to drill down on the objective evaluation point here, because we did say, you need to be able to distinguish between what is valid feedback from, whether it's from a professional or a reviewer or beta reader who knows what they're talking about, versus Joe Blow who doesn't like romance and it's just a personal opinion. So how, that could be a whole video in itself, I feel, but how does one separate those two?
You mean how does one determine whether the feedback is valid or not?
Exactly. How do you tell what's valid feedback that you need to learn from and what is feedback that you can be like, okay, that's just we're not going to worry about that one.
Well, we've kind of made the assumption up to now in the video that you are getting professional feedback from an editor
that's valid and that
who you're paying for. So it's a good idea to trust their expertise, right? When it comes to reviews that you get on Amazon or something, it's different, and sometimes you get some really reviews that are very personal, that do attack you as a person. You can discard those immediately.
Nasty.
Right? They're just not relevant to your writing craft.
Yeah.
Right? Anything that talks about how a person feels about a book is not relevant to your writing craft. Okay, so you can just go, okay, that really is just someone's personal will. They can say, I like this book, I didn't like this book, I didn't like it because da-da-da, but they're not talking about writing craft, okay? And often these are short, not well-considered reviews, and then you get the longer ones that are more detailed, and you can have a look at the person and how many reviews they write, and, you can, solidly evaluate that. But honestly, my advice with reviews is have your book professionally edited, and then you can ignore those reviews, right? Because it's good.
Yeah. You've hired the professionals who know what they're doing, know what they're talking about.
Exactly. So
then it would allow those ones that are a bit more nasty and personal on Amazon to just slide off your back a little more as well.
Like water off a duck's back. Yeah.
Because you're not then questioning it.
That's
yourself.
right. Because what we don't want is someone who's made a fabulous book. They've had professional support all the way through. We don't want them we don't want them doubting themselves because they've got this, 3-star or 2-star or whatever review coming through.
From Joe Blow who doesn't like romance.
Yeah, and you do get people who think they know about writing and they actually don't.
I think that's probably the hardest one.
That is the hardest one because they'll make it sound like they know. I have seen someone accuse someone of head hopping and I'm going, there's no head hopping in this book, right? So, yeah. So I think you do have to trust. And if you've not worked with a professional editor, then okay, that is really difficult. But if you have done, you just go, nah, I know my book, I know the craft's
and
good.
And you could always book a manuscript appraisal with a professional editor by heading to our website.
And I have had authors that have done that.
With already published books.
And they come to me and they say, I've had some bad reviews and I really think I need to work more on this, and they give it to me, and it's a pity they hadn't done it before they published it.
Better late than never.
Yeah, and I've got a lot of references from authors who say that. You say, I wish I'd come to Tahlia first, because you don't know what you don't know until someone points it out to you. Yeah. So, yes, I am an editor. Yes, I would like some work, but actually I've got plenty of work. But it really does help at this stage of getting reviews if you can be confident in your own work. Yeah. And in that case, I would say don't pay too much attention to any of your reviews, frankly.
So criticism and feedback is a part of every creative profession, whether you are an author, a musician, a filmmaker, an artist. It's part of the journey. These stages are common to all creatives in the creative profession. Some reviews are just going to be personal opinion. You can't please everyone. No book is loved by everyone. And some feedback will be professional criticism that you can learn from. And, there is a skill in distinguishing between those two. Creatives who do learn from that valid feedback will progress faster and go further because of it.
Yeah, they will become better at whatever.
Better at their craft.
Better at their craft, yeah. And I think it's very common for an author to be kind of have that fear, that fear of bad reviews, that fear of being rejected by publishers. And I think if you just accept that you're likely to get that, right, you're likely to be rejected more than you're going to be accepted if you're submitting to selective publishers. And if you just accept that you're going to get a few bad reviews, then it's not so hard.
Yeah.
Because you go, oh, hey, I got my first negative review today,
Yeah. Criticism doesn't mean you're a bad writer. It means you're learning. And your value as a person is not determined by a review of your creative work.
Yeah.
You are not your creative work.
Yeah.
There is a difference.
Yeah. And honestly, I can tell you about so many authors whose first work came to me in a pretty, a shape that required a lot of work, and they have now published 4 or 5 books, and I hardly have to touch them because they just learned so much.
Now they're great writers.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the process. So tell us in the comments, what is the most difficult piece of criticism you've ever received?
Was it Joe Blow from Amazon who just had a really unfortunate opinion about your book? Or was it something that was by a professional and you actually learnt and improved your craft from it? Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, and thank you so much for watching. If you're writing fiction, my book, Novel Writing Mastery, is out now, and it's pretty comprehensive, and it's got lots and lots of advice.
And there's a section in there on dealing with negative feedback as well,
there
isn't
is.
there?
That's
so
right.
You want more.
Yeah, and if you want,
in-depth
want these points written down, so you can go, negative feedback. Right, where is that chapter?
Yeah.
There it is. It will remind you of the whole thing. Yeah. So I recommend it. Really.
Yeah. So if you like this video, hit the subscribe button. Check us out on our website. You can book a manuscript appraisal with Tahlia if you need to know if your books, if you should be ignoring the reviews you're getting or taking advice from them. And we'll see you in the next video.
Bye.
Bye.